Let's talk about the 600i Explorer and the 600i in general in 2024. And basically, this is pre-pass. So if there's a surprise release of the 600i Explorer and the 600i Touring after this, well, this is out of date. So you'll see in the cards another video. I'll put it in the post. It's there as well if I remember to put in the pin comment. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank them a lot for subscribers. So the elevator inside the current 600i Explorer is nice, but you can only use it really with rear ramped vehicles when you get to the size of an Ursa. Thank goodness the Ursa has a rear ramp on the different kinds of Ursas. And I mean, really, the one you want is the Ursa Medevac because it gives you medical. One of the big benefits of the 600i Explorer coming up in the rework is that it will gain its own medical, so then you'll gain that space back. Also, in the rework concept art, and that it goes a little beyond concept art, but the CIG showed the ability to fit a Nova tank inside one and a lot more cargo because if you have a Ursa sitting in there, you're tying up storage basically that you could have otherwise used for other things. And this is supposed to be an explorer based ship, but it's not a true full fledged explorer because the 600i Explorer and the 600i Touring share a hull, and then there's a core that can be changed out in theory. And basically, they have everything the same in the back and the front, but then in the core, it's different. So, for their role. Now, where we're at now is on the base of the ship, like the lower floor, and I'm pointing out that the crew quarters, which this is what this is that Sleeps for, is terrible because it doesn't have walls. Many other folks have pointed this out that while this is a nice little bit of space for the crew, including escape pods, including beds, including two separate bathrooms that are attached to these locker rooms. And you'll see they're quite large for restrooms on a ship, anyway. And I think you could argue that probably one of the only ones that can compare to that is like the Carrack with its sillily large, outdated showers and bathrooms. To be fair, those were the argument is that in lore the Carrack is so old, and that's one of the reasons, and it's long distance type activities. But it brings up an interesting point: is the 609 meant to be long distance? And I think because of its explorer and its touring roles, that can be fairly argued that at the very least it's meant to go multiple systems across an area. Obviously refueling and such, but or storing the fuel in this cargo, I guess. But basically, it's meant to be a long distance ship. Now, even in the Explorer, there's this large master suite, which you'll note has its own restroom, which is nice as well, and it's well accommodated for hygiene and such. But one of the things that the master suite doesn't do well is that it takes away from that beautiful view it has at the front of the ship because that window is incredible. And as someone who's used that window for cinematography and different shots on videos and such, when you're trying to get really specific shots and the advanced camera ain't working right, standing on a bed is kind of super awkward when you're just trying to get some work done. And it's a shame that's not like a viewing room. On the Phoenix, they do a good job of having like privacy glass for the master bedroom that has an entire interior window, and then it has an exterior window inside the master bedroom. I don't know why, but it just feels like it flows better. Like the master bedroom does have good views, is what I'm getting at on the Phoenix, on the Constellation Phoenix, but it does not detract from the views from the overall ship. And unless we're talking about the rear compartment, we'll get to in a few moments. Um, I feel like that the master bedroom it makes forces the rest of the ship to make a lot of sacrifices. I do like this view into the lower level. It's like you can walk on that, by the way. It's like a see-through floor, showing the status of those locations. That's an area I just pointing out that basically I've been stuck in that wall a few times, phased into it. There's support stations that don't look at the giant hologram that's in the same room, which is bad design. No, there, I'll just say it. Um, and inside the armory, there is one of the few that has a ton of weapon storage for this size of ship, but the suit lockers don't really function well. Now, this armory is going to be completely changed out in the new one, where there's going to be like display tables in the middle where people can suit up, and then the armory itself is going to have like a ton of suit lockers based on at least the art we've seen. And as you can see, the suit lockers themselves and the current one do not function, but there's two of these racks inside the room, and you can see how many two-hand weapons or utility gear, and then the one-hand weapons above, sidearms and such, and smaller utility gear that you can put into those. The bottom racks are for the larger gear, and the top rack is for the smaller gear. So even without the suit lockers, there's a lot there going on. Now, into the back compartment that I alluded to a few moments ago, and I gotta say, one of my biggest pet peeves is this glass. It's extremely awkward. I'm sure it helps with bringing light into the lower floor, but this is where people are meant to stand as a bartender mixing drinks. And if you're not wearing the correct attire, um, that can be awkward. Now, I'm not saying anything, I'm not alluding to anything at all. I think it was more of a you can see how darkly lit it is down there when it's not like the literal sun of Stanton is not glowing through the back window. I think it was just an attempt to bring natural light into the base of the ship, and that just happened to be the only spot they could put it. Uh, Whatever. I'm just saying that it needs to change. On the new version, I really don't think it's a good idea to have see-through glass anywhere near where people are standing or sitting at a bar or any other kind of table. It's just awkward. That's all I was getting at. But it is a ship. You have to make certain sacrifices, like my giant refrigerator that doesn't function. Um, that you can see on that wall there in that scene. Into the engineering spaces, following the 890 jumps design, there's engineering spaces on the left side and the right side at the rear of the compartment. As a reminder, both ships have these, and in the future, when you have to repair modules and deal with relays and such, it, this will be a thing. But I don't think that the full first version of engineering gameplay is going to require you to start replacing relays all over this ship because it's going to be reworked. CIG traditionally has a approach of if it isn't in yet and we're about to change it, why bother? And that has its benefits and its drawbacks. One of the benefits is that you can run this ship potentially with less crew than another ship that is wired for engineering of the same size. So I'll pick a random ship here. If a C2 Hercules is wired up for engineering gameplay, it's not a stretch to say that the A2 was one of the test beds for engineering gameplay, and then you have to relays to replace all over the ship, and you have to run all over to replace things as they pop, and as you get damaged or shot, or if it just wears out over time. Um, you will not have to have somebody sitting down in the engineering spaces of this potentially because it's not being set up for all that. Although, to be fair, CIG might just put the relays at the front or something, or one specific spot, like just hang two boxes on the ship and just go, okay, they're the relay locations, but not integrated and as much so as other ships. On the new tally, for example, if you're saying, well, I don't have that type of ship to look at, I don't have a Hercules to look at. If you get your hands on a tally or just crew on a tally, take a look at the back space where like the rear torpedo or module of whatever other kind they put in there. That little room that leads into the back space, you have to go through. That's it. Now, one of the things about a 600i is that this seat is not the pilot seat. So once again, just like the 890 jump, the center seat is the pilot seat. So this is like a co-pilot seat or support seat. And I was like, I've never bothered to sit in it. And I was like, well, what if somebody just comes on the ship, doesn't know nothing about it yet? They're still learning their ship or they're still whatever. Well, right now it's not working right. But the pilot seat is just fine. So the big seat that goes up into the top of the room, that seat is working fine. And this ship is no slouch. You're talking about three size 5 repeaters on board that are firing energy blasts off of it. But they do have a limitation. So, what you have to remember is you don't have to worry about ammo with energy based weaponry, but you do have to worry about capacitor. So, as the power drains, you can see that clip that it fires from is slowly but surely going down. And the funny thing about these weapons is you have a giant shield pool for this. I mean, the ship has a pretty reasonable sized shield pool. You have a weapon system on board that doesn't run out of ammunition, and the only thing you have to do is just pace yourself with the energy based weapons at least, and you can sustain for a very long time. I've caught heat before in videos by bringing a solo 600i Explorer, this exact ship, and you can see how the shields take a while to recharge because they're really big ship. It's a really big ship. But once you have that buffer up, even in master modes, um, it's pretty sustainable. You can take a 600i into like Xenothreat, for example, and you can do a lot. Now, when you start talking about the missiles, so those are size threes. That's no joke. So the thing of that is, though, is they do have to be replaced. So they cost money. You have to spend UEC to replace them. And you also have to factor in that size threes, see that reload speed? It's not the fastest thing. Like you can't spray like, six of these things at once. And I wouldn't recommend it. So even if you could shoot a couple, there is two launchers technically. I wouldn't. Size threes are big, missiles are buggy. You could have a dip in the net in what I call the net code, but the dip in the server latency and all the different things that kind of connect the dots, and you would really regret blowing through a lot of missiles very quickly. Um, these size threes are really useful, and they're very tastefully tucked into the ship, and that's nice, and it has a very legitimate purpose too. A player can't just roll up and easily from a distance glance at your wings and see if you have your missiles or not. On some vehicles, technically they can, which is kind of an interesting trade-off. I talked about that on even ground vehicles, like the ballista, for example, about how like somebody can see if you're out of the scary stuff or not by now, and yeah, and they mess with you or not based on that. Whereas this ship, it kind of hides them really well. So if those size threes are important because if you cannot yawl and pitch your way into a fight where you can get those size fives on target that are front facing, the size threes might give somebody a pause. Okay, you're not, maybe you won't completely knock out a Vanguard or something, but a size three or two slapping a Vanguard, it might even destroy a ship. If they make connection, if the damage is translated, or at the very least knock a good chunk of them off and make them be limping away. And that's what I like to call those when you get into the size twos and size threes. Is like if you have enough of them, you can kind of like, and you have a big enough shield buffer, you can kind of play some games with people, even just throwing your mass around. And I left this in just showing that you cannot lay down and go to sleep in the bed inside the hangar because you're at a planetary landing location. But if you leave it there, the ship will stay. That does it for the 600i. We're now into overtime. And I wanted to show a few things about the hangar that I've seen since the last video I released. You can see that the hangar has some of the things from my previous video, well, all of them really, like as if I never left. And even the warehouse elevator that leads to the cargo, your inventory and such, kept everything. It didn't clear it out. You can see this damaged Ursa that's still functional. This medevac Ursa. It even had my regen saved into it, so my regen stamp. Now I did have to reopen it. The doors were closed. I don't remember closing all the doors, but I'll be honest with you, I really didn't bother like going and checking every ounce of video. You can see that weird glitch on the inside, probably from, once again, it's heavily damaged. It got popped by a quad hammerhead turret, me testing the ability to defend a hangar and test weapons and such in a hangar, which is not something to take for granted until you test it and confirm it, right? So you can see that my medical clone was still inside here. That very bed is what I'd appear at if I died nearby. Now, there's been some questions about that. The Ursa medevac is technically balanced because the Nursa only has a short distance regen. So if like you fall through the sky in like say Orison or something, you better backspace quicker sooner than later. Like I mean, if you're falling to like nowhere, right? Especially in the PTU, because then you'll just pop back into your Nursa sitting inside your hangar. It's no big deal. But if you like just go miles and miles away, it does have a finite distance that the regen is functional for. And that was not due to the NERSA. That's not like it was originally meant to balance it. It was more because there was some weird situations where people were like taking ships that had medical on board with regen, like for example, Carracks, and then somebody would run away with the ship. They would come back, and they'd be like backspacing to teleport, so to speak, into the other end of the star system, and then they were like fighting with the people who took the ship and all this crazy nonsense. So to try to make some kind of balance to this, um, basically they put a finite distance on regen. So I bring this up because people that are expecting to be able to like medical jump over for regeneration over to pyro are going to be in for a rude awakening. Also, the Nursa has a limitation in the distance, and based on what we're seeing, the tier of the bed and the type of platform it's on will impact the regen distance based on everything we're seeing. Um, the video you're actually watching has nothing to do with that. Interestingly, it is about nurses, but and the 600i Explorer, which will have medical as well. Interestingly, but uh, more importantly, I wanted to show that the 600i has significant issues with side-facing doorways on vehicles. In the past, I've had people who, call me out on not adding like the negative drawbacks of when I'm doing testing and stuff, and so they don't have to repeat the same mistakes. So I'm trying to like integrate them as cleanly as possible into the video, so this overtime section makes sense. But basically, the Ursa has a benefit of having both a door in the back and a door at the side. I did put that in the video earlier, but I didn't mention why it was important. So, anyway, the back door on the Ursa, you can. That's actually the weapon rack. But up top there, you can open it, and there you go. You're out. I think these giant elevator um, things on the sides are really obsolete. They're just too dang big. Do they look cool and do they look realistic? Sure, but they're not very practical. Oh, and this is my final bit for this video. The inventory system. So I appreciate everyone who gave me feedback on using the arrows to change the direction, because right now, when you go up to a cargo kiosk, if you're too close to the kiosk, it will just give you a blurred out image. If you're further away, it kind of has an awkward, partially obscured image. But if you hit the left or the right arrow, you can easily see your character. And then you can double click or drag and drop items onto your person. Now, the thing of it is, there is no drawer, and I understand that's a hot topic right now. You can see you can double click. But the old school inventory to me, if it's functional for now, is fine. I do feel that there's like this weird situation. And by the way, you can't double click back. That's one of the reasons I drag and drop. So it's more smooth for me where I can drag things onto the character and I can drag it back. You can only double click to equip, and most of the time when I double click, I can't pull things back off my person. Now, look, if you get closer to the kiosk, like in a SOP terminal, you're used to getting close. That's how it looks until you arrow key over. There it is, arrow key over. So yeah, if you're trying to play, you can always go to view things further away from the kiosk. If the kiosk is acting up, there's a zillion kiosks. Go to another one. And if you see one player only stop at a kiosk for like a second, that's probably a good hint that that kiosk is out of order because they're moving themselves to the other kiosks, especially the ones in the Habs. As a reminder, if you didn't see my last video, the ones in the Habs are not functional right now, and I'm sure there'll be a new build coming up. But yeah, so let me know in the comments if this kind of video helped. It was the most honest discussion I can offer. I'll be, I feel like right now, I'm dating this video a little bit by saying this, but I do believe the 600i Explorer will be at least a semi-finalist in the ship showdown that's currently going on. Um, and I feel like a lot of people are going to be looking for advice on whether to pick one up or not, for the short term benefits of, hey, you not only can get the ship, but you can also get paint. Anybody can CCU to a ship. Don't forget, you can just CCU as well, before I forget. You just have to have it in your inventory before the end of the event. So as soon as you know the semifinalist, you know what you can look around for. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts, is like, with these type of things where it's up in the air, it's coming up sooner, than later, I believe, for the rework. But, in the short term, how would you benefit from this? I believe an honest video like this is great. I've done videos in the past, one with Mason, for example, where we discussed really in depth the Explorer version of the 600i and where it kind of stands in the lineup. But I felt like a 2024 honest kind of teardown, so to speak, of the ship is important. Recapping the old issues, showing you new issues, showing you how it functions in the new hangar and the NERSA implementation. And that brings me to my final point. If you're using the 600i as like a daily driver, or hey, me and my org mates are just going to putt around in this thing, having a good time all the time, somebody needs an URSA. You need an URSA medevac. One of you better bring it. And honestly, the owner of the ship, it'd probably be best for them to have it. The least BS, if so and so's not on or something. You need that respawn capability to truly bring out this multi crew ship to its full potential. Um, oh, 600i touring. So there's no VIP missions yet. So if you're one of the new if you're newer to the project, or if you just want a reminder, the touring I really don't have much of an opinion on. I think it's really cool. I do believe that the 890 jump is way nicer, but then again, the price is up there for the 890, and also they got to factor in that jump points will have different sizes. The 890 jump is practically a capital class ship, so it's going to be more of a pain point to get around. It's going to have more eyes on it when you fly in that thing around, especially if you're even daring to take it over to Pyro. Fun fact: I did that during the Pyro tech preview, and I had some funny fights. No one blew it up. Not one soul blew it up. I'm gonna jinx myself for the future probably, but I was like chucking missiles at people and having a good time with it. And I remember the one place I came out of the Atmo to check out this location where, because what I was doing was I was just globbing an 890 jump and just parking it above a location to get footage of the location, and it just was kind of funny. Like you'd see like random cutlasses just attacking. Buccaneer attacked me. He didn't really do anything, and then I just chucked a missile or two. The Buccaneer had his wing blow off. So when I say missiles matter, they personal experience. And then you eventually joust people enough where your chaff and flares, noise and decoys and such burn through, as the game would call them, and your missiles run out, and then you have to go back to checkmate station, and go get more. It's not the most fun thing to do, but it does have long legs, and the 600 eyes do as well. But anyway, the touring would have a little less of a profile, but who we kidding? It's a fancy Origin ship that's a serious size, and it's going to have people's attention wherever it goes. It's good and bad. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you for subscribing to my longtime subscribers. Please consider subscribing if you haven't already. It means a lot to me. All right, take care.